Prakash Prabhupada Jai. Grace Urmila Mataji is senior disciple of Srila Prabhupada, preaching widely all over the world, export and presenting the Krishna consciousness in a newer and newer ways. Mataji doesn't need my introduction. So, we're grateful for Mataji's association and Katha. Go ahead, Mataji, you can start.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. One thing is that here in Vrindavan and Kartik, many times in the evening, the internet is overloaded. And so sometimes my internet goes down. I'll just do the best that I can. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nivasesa Sunivadi Paskachade Satarane Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Samsajivam Sadvoitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Vanchkalpatubhischa Kipasan Bhyavata Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevi Namo Namaha. So it's now on November 10th, 2024 in Plainfield, New Jersey, although I'm in Govardhan. And I was asked to speak on how to transform our consciousness to Vrindavan consciousness. Actually, Srila Prabhupada says that if we can accept the mentality or the consciousness of the residents of Vrindavan, even to a minute degree, then our whole life is successful. Really, our whole Krishna consciousness movement is to try to become Vrindavan conscious, to have the consciousness of the residents of Vrindavan. And I was thinking of so many ways of doing this. I mean, it's kind of a long list of all the ways in which we can develop Vrindavan consciousness. So I'm going to talk about some of them. I'm sure you all can think about many, many more. So on March 12th in 1976, Srila Prabhupada was talking about, and it's funny, I can find it in Hari Sari's diary, and I can find it in like the list of audio books, but if I do a search in the database, I can't, it doesn't show up, but I know that I've heard it. And Hari Sari Prabhu was also saying that he had heard it on this date, where Prabhupada was saying that the residents of Vrindavan, they're just happy to see Krishna smile. They don't want anything else. They're not interested in achieving anything else. If Krishna smiles, they're happy. And I was thinking a lot on this point, not just to see Krishna smile, but often to see Krishna laugh. And sometimes I wonder if I'm making Krishna happy just by making him laugh, and how foolish I am. But at least Krishna's getting some kind of humor. I mean, this is, of course, Vaikuntha, not Vrindavan, but that Brahmana who was meditating on offering things to Krishna, and then he went to touch the sweet rice and he burned his finger. And when he did that, it says that Narayan in Vaikuntha was laughing. And Lakshmi said, well, why are you laughing? And he said, I'll bring the Brahmana here and then you can see. But the residents of Vaikuntha, they're much more in a very reverential mood, whereas the residents of Vrindavan, they like to see Krishna laugh and Krishna smile in a much more playful way. So, the cowherd boys will do things like tell Krishna to close his eyes, say, close your eyes, open your mouth, and then they stick a flower in his mouth. Our acharyas say that sometimes they take Krishna's samosa when he's not looking, and they take all the veggies out and they put flowers in and then they give it to Krishna, and he takes it and makes a funny face, and then everybody laughs and he's also laughing. And of course, every day the cowherd boys are thinking up so many new games to play in which Krishna is laughing. And then, of course, Krishna is laughing with the young gopis, hasya parihasya sambhasane. They're always joking. Krishna's always telling funny jokes with the gopis. And he likes to make them angry and then laugh at them when they realize that he's just trying to make them angry. He's always playing different tricks on them. And of course, those in parental mood, they're also liking to make Krishna laugh. Just like in this world, we like to see children laugh. I think that there's not very many sounds that are as charming as a little baby laughing, a very young child laughing. And so what Prabhupada will call elderly members of Vrindavan, in other words, people who are in their like 30s or 40s or something, Prabhupada would call them elderly. So they would like to have Krishna laugh. They would ask him to dance, and they would say, if you dance nicely, we'll give you a sweetmeat. For our work in this world, just trying to make Krishna smile, is very much related to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati saying that we shouldn't try to see God, but we should act in such a way that God will see us. And I see that making Krishna smile, just being happy that Krishna is smiling, often involves the little things that maybe other people don't see, other people don't notice. You know, if you're at the temple or you're anywhere, and Prabhupada would do this even anywhere, even with other people's houses and yards. You know, if you see water running or dripping, turn it off. If you see trash lying around, pick it up, take care of it. If you see something that that needs to be done, that you can do, that it's possible for you to do. You know, these little things, who's going to notice? Who's going to notice that you pick up the dirty cup and spoon that's lying around and throw it in the trash? Who's going to notice these kind of things? But Krishna is going to notice. It's his place, and he's going to smile. You know, the ways we deal with people when they, especially when they irritate us, when people are inconsiderate of us, or how do we deal with them? Are we dealing with them so that Krishna will smile at us? Are we enjoying that Krishna is smiling at us? So just to think at every moment we can think like this. Is Krishna smiling at what I'm doing? Is he happy? Is this something that's pleasing to him? You know, we can talk about it in a general way. We should try to please Krishna. But in a Vrindavan consciousness, we're really thinking about Krishna as a person and seeing this smile on his face. Actually, the Bhagavatam says that affection, Krishna's affection, is shown in his teeth and his beautiful smile. So from the way we deal with other people, the way we deal with things, the way we do our sadhana, the way we do our work, people ask me all the time, how can I dedicate my work to Krishna? Can you work in such a way that Krishna would smile at you? For how you're dealing with your colleagues, or if there's customers, how you're dealing with your customers, if you have employees, employers, how are you dealing with them? Are you dealing with them in a way that would make Krishna smile? Are you being a kind friend to all living entities? But again, specifically, the Vrindavan consciousness is not just in a general way, I'm trying to please Krishna, but seeing, you know, Vrajendra Nandana as seeing Vraj Kishore or Vraj Kumar, or however one is meditating on Krishna, and to see him smile. Then another thing that really struck me in meditating on this topic was when Krishna goes to see the gopis at Kurukshetra during the time of the eclipse. And of course, he's seeing all the different residents of Vrindavan, and he's there with Nanda and Yasoda and so forth. But then he kind of leaves Nanda and Yasoda to talk, for them to talk with Vasudeva and Devaki. And Krishna goes to sort of a little private place to talk to the gopis. And his instruction there is fascinating. He tells them, actually is very much like the third verse of the Chatur Sloki 2:9-35, where Krishna says, I've entered into everything, and yet I remain separate from everything. And he tells the gopis, you're not really separate from me, because I'm there in everything. I'm there in all of your thoughts. I'm there in the mind. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita of senses, I am the mind. I'm there in every atom. I'm there in everything you see, everything you interact with. And that way you can always feel connected with me. Of course, the gopis were not entirely satisfied with this. They're like, wait a minute, we want you there personally to joke and laugh with and to hug and play games with. So they weren't exactly thrilled by this instruction. But Srila Prabhupada says that this instruction that Krishna gives the gopis at Kurukshetra, again, this is Krishna book, chapter 82, that this is something that all of us should take very seriously. And if we want to enter into Vrindavan consciousness, we're going to have to do that in a feeling of separation in this world, following the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who had a genuine mood, a genuine mood in general of separation. Sometimes Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would see Krishna in front of him, or see Krishna in a vision, or be meditating in a way that he would see Krishna, but generally his feeling was that of separation. And the gopis are advised in separation to become aware of the Lord everywhere and everything. So this is something, sometimes we think of this perhaps as either a practice to be done by beginners who don't know about Krishna in Vrindavan, or we think it's a practice that happens automatically and spontaneously with the great devotees, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Sharma Sundara Chincha Gunaswarupam, to see that Krishna is everything. But this is a practice both for the beginner and for the advanced, and it's certainly a type of sadhana to try to see that Krishna is everywhere. And by doing this, we enter into the separation mood of the residents of Vrindavan. So, I put together a book on this with Kamala Sita that we call Krishna Meditations. How to see Krishna in the light of the sun, how to see Krishna in the moon, how to see Krishna in your ability, your ability to sit, your ability to walk, how to find Krishna in the air you breathe, how to realize that the air we're breathing is Krishna's prana. And one could think of this as, oh, well, this is a little, it's just a Virat Rupa, and it's just Krishna's vibhutis, it's not really personal. But one can have it be very personal, because otherwise, why would Krishna tell this instruction to the gopis? I mean, when we're hearing about in the Bhagavatam how the air is Krishna's breath, so that every breath we're taking in, we're breathing in Krishna's prana. So one could take that in a very general way. I mean, I could imagine some, spiritual seeking yoga types who are like, oh yes, this is the universal prana. But for the residents of Vrindavan, they're actually seeing that that's Krishna. That's the person Krishna. It's Nanda Maharaj's son, it's Yasoda Devi's son. It's Radharani's beloved, it's Sudama's friend, that he's breathing, and I'm breathing in his breath. That the smells of the flowers are the smells of his breath. And they're thinking his breath, Krishna's. They're not just thinking in terms of the universal form. They're saying that the whole world is Krishna's body. We have descriptions by our acharyas about how Krishna sees the Vrindavan forest as being like Radharani's body, and Srimati Radharani sees the Vrindavan forest as being like Krishna's body. But we can see the whole world like that. Vasudevam Sarvamiti and Sarvakalamidam Brahma. Everything is actually Krishna. This is his body. So that's a way we can cultivate Vrindavan consciousness. If we meditate on, the taste of this water, it's Krishna. That's Krishna. That's how Krishna tastes. How delightful, right? The smell of this flower. That's how Krishna smells. That's how my beloved Krishna smells in Vrindavan. And this is something that we can cultivate. It's something we can do very intentionally. Another way we can enter into Vrindavan consciousness is to keep in mind what Krishnadas Kaviraj speaks about in Adi Lila, about how the gopis find more happiness in uniting other gopis with Krishna rather than enjoying Krishna themselves. So Prabhupada talks about this particular mentality of being the differentiation between material life and spiritual life. And there's several different ways that Prabhupada will distinguish how do you tell what's material and what's spiritual. But one of them is that in materialistic life, we're happy at others' unhappiness, and we're unhappy at others' happiness. Prabhupada says we may deny this, but it's actually the fact. I mean, there's a big business in the, news media and of hearing about how big famous people are having some kind of suffering, how some famous, beautiful, rich movie star is getting a divorce, or how they have a drug problem, or maybe how they committed suicide, or they're depressed, and people they like this. Oh, this person, we thought they were so great. We thought, they're so powerful, but just see they're suffering in so many ways. And we don't like it when people are happy. This is envy. Envy in this world is like that. That, okay, you can be happy, but you can't be as happy as I am. Right? You can have good, smart kids, but my kids have to be better and smarter. And you can be good looking, but I have to be better looking. You can have a nice car, but I have to have a better car. And extreme envy, of course, is I don't want you to have a car at all. I want to be the only one with a nice car. So this is materialistic thinking. And Prabhupada says, even though we may deny it, that we're all guilty of this. And spiritual thinking, Vrindavan consciousness, is just the opposite. Vrindavan consciousness, Prabhupada says, in talking about this, there's no unhappiness, but one is happy at others' happiness. Says when the gopis see Krishna enjoying with Radharani, they become, millions of times happier than when Krishna is enjoying with them. And when Radharani sees Krishna enjoying with the other gopis, she becomes millions of times happier than when Krishna is enjoying with her. How do we demonstrate this practically? How do we live practically in this Vrindavan consciousness? So yesterday, in Vrindavan, here in India. So I was talking with one devotee from the UK, and she was saying that she asked her spiritual master, "What service can I do?" And he said, "Why don't you give a donation to offer Nitya Seva to the deities here at our project?" And she's thinking, okay, that's 11,000 British pounds. And I'm disabled. I'm living on, like what we in the United States, like Social Security and disability. I don't have that kind of money. I don't have the wherewithal to give that kind of money. But she was thinking, well, if my Guru Maharaj asked me to do this, then what does Prabhupada say? The success potency is there in the orders of Guru. So she thought, well, it must be possible for me to do this if I've gotten this order from Guru. So what she did was she went around asking donations, and she lives in a place where there aren't devotees. There are a lot of Indians, but there aren't very many devotees of Krishna. And she's ethnic Indian, although she lives in the UK. So she's going around to her neighbors who aren't members of ISKCON. They're not Hare Krishna devotees. They're not in the Gaudiya Sampradaya. And she's showing them pictures of the deities at her Guru Maharaj's place. And she's saying, would you please donate for, lifetime service. I forget which particular service she was sponsoring. And she got it. She ended up getting enough donations from enough people that she was able to do it. So what was she doing? Instead of, I said to her, what's glorious about this is how you became happy by engaging other people in service. If you just gave the 11,000 yourself, if you had the financial wherewithal to give the 11,000 yourself, that would be very nice. It's certainly very nice. But because you engage all these other people, that's actually the Vrindavan mood. this idea that I'm happy seeing other people being engaged in service. Of course, we also engage in service. It's not that we just sit in our bed and sleep and say, I'm taking happiness in other people doing service. I don't mean like that. But in other words, we take pleasure at engaging others in service, and especially we take pleasure at engaging others in service according to their talents and propensities. And this is certainly very important. The devotees in Vrindavan, they see that everybody is serving Krishna so wonderfully in their own way. They're appreciating, oh, they're doing something wonderful that I couldn't do. You know, I have my way of serving Krishna, but everyone else has their ways and what they can offer. So when we help devotees to serve Krishna according to that devotee's nature, according to that devotee's talents, according to that devotee's interests, that's part of Vrindavan consciousness. Not just, oh, okay, everybody has to wash the pots. I mean, okay, everybody can help wash the pots. But not that I was washing pots today, but not that that's the only thing that we do. And that's the only thing that we engage people in. But we actually get to know people. What are your talents? What are your interests? What kind of personality do you have? What kind of nature, what Prabhupada would say, our psychophysical nature? Then finding a way for them to be involved in the mission. And then seeing them blossom and seeing them grow and develop in that service. And that's our happiness. You know, there's a little taste of that in this world. Like Prabhupada said, the closest thing to spiritual love in this world is a mother's love. I think it's there in fathers too, where you see your child excel you, you know, and you take pleasure in that. And you, wow, my child is doing something so wonderful. I'm so happy that my child's doing something wonderful. I mean, there are parents who are envious of their children, of course, but this gives us some idea. This is very much the Vrindavan consciousness. And then another way to be in the Vrindavan consciousness is really getting the feeling of a personal relationship with Krishna. Of course, our specific personal relationship with Krishna has to awaken on its own in its own time. That's not something that can be forced. But still, Prabhupada wrote in 1967 a letter to Vallabhi saying that when you chant Hare Krishna, you should feel the presence of Krishna. And this means that we really feel like that, to really meditate. How am I having a personal relationship with Krishna? How is he guiding me? How is he helping me? How is he arranging my life? How do the good things and the bad things, how are they all part of his program for me? And just feeling his presence at every step in my life, beyond just the taste of water and the light of the sun and the prana in the air. But how is he dealing with me? Prabhupada would often compare Krishna to the owner or the boss of a company, and how that when you please your immediate supervisor, the boss is also pleased. And he would also sometimes talk about how the owner or the chief manager's presence is felt throughout the organization, and that one can be feeling, oh, I have some personal dealings with the owner, even if you don't, or the top manager, even if you don't always see them in front of you. So this feeling that I have this personal relationship with Krishna, I may be in separation, I may not be with him in this moment in a way that I can perceive, but to have this kind of a sense. And then another aspect of entering into Vrindavan consciousness is very nicely explained in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu as mamata. And mamata means a sense of ownership of Krishna, which it's quite fascinating, actually. So when Srila Rupa Goswami is describing Shantaras, the rasa of neutrality, so one form of Shantaras, he says, is very common. And this we find often in the world, where people feel some rasa, some taste, some happiness from a general concept and practice of worshiping God in a general way without much sense of personality. and without much sense of a personal relationship. And Sri Rupa Goswami says in this Shantaras that this mamata is completely absent. There's not a trace of it, that God is mine. Whereas in Vrindavan, even there's some Shantaras in Vrindavan, Prabhupada will say sometimes that like the cows are in Shantaras. So there's this sense that Krishna is mine. Krishna is sorry, it's nighttime here. That Krishna is my master, that Krishna is my son, that Krishna is my friend, that Krishna is my beloved. Krishna is mine. There's a class where Srila Prabhupada says that if we want to be above possessiveness, then we need to have Krishna as our possession. He says we cannot be without possessions. This is an impersonal idea. I'm just going to say, well, I don't own anything. Prabhupada says we can't think that. We have to think Krishna is mine. And again, this mood that Krishna is mine is particularly a Vrindavan mood. So those of us who have some deity form of the Lord at home that we worship, and we can think, oh, these are my deities. This is my Gaurnitai. This is my Radha Krishna. So, Krishna, this is my Jagannath, this is my Giriraj, my Shalagram, this is my Laglu Gopal, this is my deities. They're mine. Krishna is mine. He's my greatest possession. Or we can think that about the temple deities. This is my deity that I worship, whatever form of the deity we have in our local temple. Well, this is my deity. Now, of course, when we say Krishna is mine, it doesn't mean like my possession, I can do whatever I want with. But it's an extension of this intimacy. And of course, we also think that I am Krishna's. I am Krishna's and Krishna is mine. And this sense of ownership really is, we could say, an essential factor in love. Whenever we have a loving relationship with someone, we speak like that. This is my mother. I am her daughter. Right? This is my husband. I am his wife. This is my son. I am his mother. So it goes in both directions. And there's some sense of ownership. This is my friend. Right? So to develop that with Krishna. And then also, the Vrindavan consciousness means a real appreciation of the simple rural pastimes of Krishna. Lakshmi Devi wants to enter the rasa dance, but she can't because she wants to keep her mood of I'm Queen Lakshmi Devi and I have my crown and I have my jewels and I have my fancy clothes and, she wants to take that with her and it just won't work. Vrindavan is very rustic. It's very simple. They're walking around barefoot. they're not. Prabhupada says that Krishna, in Dwarka, he has beautiful shoes. But in Vrindavan, he's barefoot and he likes to decorate himself with colored berries like gunja berries in Vrindavan and just taking mineral pigments from the rocks and the dirt and taking, bird's feathers and sticking them in his hair. I mean, if you really think about it, how we worship Krishna with the peacock feather, I mean, when we were children, if we were in the country, we might see some feather from a bird and stick it in our hair. Of course, our parents usually said, that's dirty, don't do that. It's interesting that we tend to associate this peacock feather as an insignia of God, which it is not, by the way. The specific insignia of God is the Srivatsa and the Kaustubha jewel. And many other residents of Vrindavan like to wear peacock feathers. There's peacocks all over the place. And so there's peacock feathers all over the place. And so the residents of Vrindavan in general, Mother Yasoda puts peacock feathers in her hair and so forth. But in other words, it's this very pastoral mood. It's not grandiose opulence. Of course, it's very opulent, I mean, each grain of sand is fully conscious, Chintamani jewel. And when Krishna plays his flute, the jewel platforms under the trees, they melt and reform into other shapes, and everything is, I mean, look, if Indra can have benches made out of coral, and Uttanapad on this planet in Satyuga had a staircase made out of emerald stone. Imagine that instead of marble stone. If you had a suitcase, a staircase made out of emeralds. So if that's true on this planet in former ages or in Indra's planet, then certainly in the spiritual world, such things are there and they're all living. But still, the opulence of Vrindavan is this simplicity and rural setting. And to then appreciate Krishna not just as God. Now, here we have to give a little caveat, because Srila Prabhupada often says before you can read the 10th canto, you have to read the first 9 cantos, and one has to really accept that Krishna is God, and one has to understand Krishna's opulences, and one has to understand something of Krishna's potencies and Krishna's qualities. So if we just immediately jump to the Vrindavan Leela, we're probably going to misunderstand them. We're just going to think that Krishna is an ordinary person, and that's going to be a problem. Of course, with Srila Prabhupada's books, that possibility is greatly diminished, because, say, in Krishna book, where we're giving people immediately the 10th canto, but Srila Prabhupada has interlaced philosophy with the Leela, so that we're getting, it's as if we're getting all the 9 cantos in terms of, not in terms of the details of the stories, of course, but in terms of the philosophical understanding. Still, we want to keep that philosophical understanding. We want to remember that Krishna is God. Still, we want to relish these leelas, and we want to relish these relationships Krishna has with his Vrindavan devotees, where they actually forget that he's God. You know, when Mother Yasoda sees the universal form, she's like, oh, what's going on here? And she wonders if Krishna is a demigod, or even if Krishna is God. And then she just gets covered again by Yogamaya and looks at him and says, oh, all right, you're my little son. So to relish this, I mean, even Queen Kunti in Hastinapur, when Krishna was leaving, and she's saying, how is it that you're actually afraid of Mother Yasoda? So we're in Kartik right now, and every day we're singing about the Lord's Damodar pastimes with his mother. And to really think about this, you know, that he's rubbing his eyes again and again, and he's crying, and he's scared. Oh, my mother might hit me with a stick. You know, here in Vrindavan, there's so many monkeys, and they're very aggressive, and they're very dangerous. They actually have fangs. Many of them, they can carry rabies, and they can really hurt you. So most of us take a stick when we go out walking. You know, you just kind of wave your stick back and forth, and generally the monkeys are afraid of that, and they get out of your way. Sometimes they'll even really run out of your way. So Krishna's seeing this stick in the hands of his mother, and he's afraid. Just like I'm sure that most of these monkeys have never actually been hit with a stick, but still they have this sense that they're afraid. So Mother Yasoda, there's no record of her ever hitting Krishna, but still Krishna is feeling afraid. He's actually feeling afraid. And Kunti says, you know, fear personified is afraid of you. So how can you be afraid? So if we want to enter into Vrindavan consciousness, we want to cultivate a real joy and appreciation of these human-like pastimes, where Krishna is falling at Radharani's feet, where Krishna is running in fear of Mother Yasoda, actually running in fear of Mother Yasoda, where, you know, the cowherd boys go into Aghasura's mouth, and he doesn't know what to do. He's confused. And where he's just playing. You know, if you look at a young child, and one of the hallmarks of young children is how powerless they are, how helpless they are. And here's the all-powerful Lord enjoying being helpless. He actually feels helpless most of the time. Every once in a while, he's okay, I'm going to kill. Rob actually said there was a demon that came every day. So, okay, here's a demon I'm going to kill and show my supernatural power. But generally, he's in this mood of, I'm just a little boy. I'm just a young boy. I'm dependent on my parents. I'm dependent on my society. And to really relish this, you know, not prematurely without the philosophy, but at the same time, to have that kind of relishing. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is to associate with devotees who are in the Vrindavan mood. Of course, we have our beloved Srila Prabhupada, the Acharya of our Hare Krishna movement. And he's definitely in the mood of Vrindavan. He himself is an eternal resident of Vrindavan. And, you know, sometimes people will say, oh, we don't feel Srila Prabhupada is Rasika enough. And so we have to go to this Babaji and that Babaji. But when we actually follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions to chant our 16 rounds, if we're second initiated, to chant our Diksha mantras 3 times a day, to take care of the deity properly, you know, to read Srila Prabhupada's books, to read the Shastra, to distribute his books, to offer our food nicely. If we actually follow these instructions, we're associating with Srila Prabhupada, who's a resident of Vrindavan. And also within his movement, there are devotees at all different levels and at all different kinds of realizations. But at least some of the time, it's good to seek out devotees who are very much in this mood of Krishna in Vrindavan, who really relish meditating on and talking about and being connected with Krishna in Vrindavan. And we find that in their company, it becomes extremely easy to enter into Vrindavan consciousness. So we talked about just trying to make Krishna smile, trying to please Krishna in this very personal way, and seeing Krishna in everything, seeing the universe as his body, and taking happiness at the happiness of others, engaging other people in the process of bhakti, seeing Krishna enjoy with other people, and then feeling this close personal relationship with Krishna, feeling that Krishna is there with us, that Krishna is involved in our life, that he cares. This feeling of possession of Krishna, mamata. Not only am I Krishna's, but Krishna is mine. And appreciating Krishna's simple human-like pastimes and having good association. So I'm not sure what the ending time was. And I took off my glasses, so I was getting like a reflection of the light in my glasses.
Till 9 o'clock. So 8:40, you can take questions if you want to.
Oh, yes. Why don't we take questions and discussions? That would be good.
Yeah. Sure.
Does anyone have any questions or discussions or corrections?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam, all glories to Sri Prabhupada.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
The first time I am hearing Mataji that you said we should think Krishna is mine, which is not easy to think that way, Mataji. Unless you are a pure devotee or your conscience is always towards Krishna. And I like this statement very much. Thank you, Mataji.
Well, you know, it's a funny thing about levels of advancement and what we can do. I find that with so many of the instructions that we get from Srila Prabhupada, from our acharyas, from the Shastra, that there are certainly some of them that are only for very advanced devotees. But in all those cases, we'll be told, this is for very advanced devotees, don't imitate it. Right? Like, don't try to see that everybody is a devotee. We have to discriminate about with whom we associate. That's one example. Right? The Bhagavat devotees, they don't have this kind of discrimination at all. But even the Mahabhagavat devotees, if they're going to act in this world and they're going to preach in this world, then they do act as if they were Madhyama devotees making a distinction. So that's an example of something that we're told, don't imitate this. Because if we imitate it and we say, oh yeah, everybody's a devotee, then we're going to be hanging out with really demoniac people, and we're going to be taking on their qualities in the name of being a Mahabhagavat. But when it comes to having this mood that Krishna is mind, this is something that Srila Prabhupada specifically tells us to practice. He says we cannot be possessionless unless we have Krishna as our possession. So I feel confident that if there's some instruction that Srila Prabhupada gives to the devotees as something he wants us to do, that we can do it, that we don't have to worry, am I advanced enough to do this? Because also we're never going to think that way. We're never going to think, I mean, Lord Chaitanya said, I don't love Krishna. So, we're never going to think, oh yes, now I'm advanced devotee. And that's not going to happen. So that's my guide, Prabhupada or Acharyas, they'll flag it. They'll say, this is for the advanced devotees, don't imitate. And we know that, and we can say, okay, that's not for me. But the other things, yes, we can do it. We can do it, we should do it.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. In material world, we live mind, so we can hold something. In spiritual world, Krishna is mind. So we have to give up in a material world, all mind. We have to give up.
Yes,
so
yes,
now
yes.
we can
But
hold something.
Together. They go together. When I feel Krishna's mind, then naturally I'm not so interested in saying mind to the things of this world. It's not that first you have to give up all your material possessiveness and then you can say Krishna's mind. That's what Arjuna thought at the beginning of the 12th chapter. First, I have to be pure, and then I can think of Krishna. Krishna's like, well, you can do it that way, but it would be very troublesome. Klesho dekartarashtation. Much more effective is to meditate on how Krishna is mine now. And if I do that, then why will I care about the possession of anything else? I'll naturally want to give it up. Okay, we have Amritananda.
Thank you, Mataji.
Sure. We have Amritananda Prabhu, yes?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances to all Guru Shishya Prabhupada. Mataji, this whole process of bhakti is to love Krishna, to attain Krishna prema.
Yes.
Now, love is something which is spontaneous. We also learn that it is unconditional, unmotivated, uninterrupted. But then to get to that stage, there are so many do's and don'ts, the regulations, chanting, association. So somehow or the other, it seems to, how do I say this? It seems to contradict that love is spontaneous. It's like an imposition. It's not spontaneous. It's studied to get to love. So how do we understand this, Mataji?
Okay, that's such a beautiful question. So just like walking is natural, and you could say it's spontaneous. In fact, a human baby right after birth, the doctors or midwife, they do what's called an APGAR score to see how healthy the baby is. And one of the things they do is they take this just born baby. I mean, we're really talking about just born, okay? Like just popped out of the womb, within the last half an hour. And they hold the baby up, and they hold the baby up, and they let the baby's feet touch a hard surface, and they see whether the baby puts one foot in front of another. It's part of what's called the APGAR score, because this walking is natural for a human, someone who's born in a human body. It's innate, it's spontaneous. However, there are some instances of feral children. They're very rare, but occasionally there are children who are raised to a certain age without much or very little human contact or any human contact. And somehow they were raised by animals. And those children generally don't walk. Sometimes they never learn to walk, but they certainly don't walk at the proper time because they didn't have any models around them, and so they didn't practice. And you know that when the child is first learning how to walk, they do have to practice. And if you watch babies learning how to walk, they have to give it their full attention. You know, first they'll just try to stand up. First they'll usually stand up holding on to something, and then they'll stand up not holding on to something. But they have to focus completely. And then, you know, they take 1 step, 2 steps, eventually they take like 8 steps, but they can't think about anything else but walking. And they're just focused on keeping their balance. They can't even walk holding something, like they can't even be holding a toy and walking. It's too much. So even though walking is natural for a human being, still it has to be practiced. And, you know, there are many times, if let's say people get married and they're in love, they really love each other, you know, what we call a love marriage, right? They get married because they're madly in love with each other. And then for a whole variety of reasons, that love may become cold and they may feel distant from each other. And then the couple may go to a trained therapist who trains them how to bring out that love that was already there. And at first it's going to feel somewhat artificial and constrained. So there's I forget what the organization was. It's some Christian organization that they came up with like a book of 40 things to do in a marriage to try to bring the love back out. And I remember, God, this was a long, long time ago, but it was some kind of devotee counseling, devotee care situation. And they were showing us this movie that was connected with this organization. It was a, pretty sure it was fictional, of this couple that had kind of drawn apart, and especially the woman was not interested in the marriage anymore, and we were really on the verge of breaking up. And the husband's father said, why don't you follow this book of things to do? It had, I think, 40 things to do, where you do all these loving things for your wife. And he didn't feel like doing any of them. You know, he was kind of disgusted, but to please his father, he went through and did them, and it didn't have any effect for quite some time. And when the 40 days were finished, he kept doing them. And then finally, his wife like really noticed and started to respond, and their relationship came back. And at that point, she finds the book and she says, oh, were you doing something out of a book? Were you just following a formula out of a book? And he says, well, yes, he said, but at first it was just mechanical. I was just following the book. But eventually it was the book giving me guidance as to what I wanted to do. And eventually I continued doing the same kind of things, even after I finished the last thing in the book. So sadhana bhakti is like that. Actually, Srila Prabhupada says very clearly that Krishna consciousness cannot, in one sense, be awakened by any kind of practice. It's something that's already within us. It's not artificial. It's not given from another source. But because we have willfully turned away from Krishna somehow or other, in some way or other, at some time or another, at this point we need to practice. Another good analogy would be if someone becomes addicted to some sort of intoxicant. So someone becomes addicted to cigarettes or tobacco or heroin or whatever it is. So they have to practice not taking this drug. I mean, like those of us, like myself, you know, fortunately, I was never addicted to anything. And so it's not, I never smoked in my life. So for me not to smoke, it's just spontaneous. You know, I just breathe. I don't have to do some practice not to smoke. But for people who are addicted to nicotine, they have to do practice. They have to do things that deliberately. They have to make an effort. And then, I was just actually reading yesterday, there's some people writing about how they gave up smoking and how, wow, I feel so much better. You know, I can breathe so much better and food tastes so much better. And I thought, they're appreciating these experiences that for me are just my normal life. You know, they're saying how much better it is just to not have that nicotine and tar and stuff in your system. But my point is they have to practice to do something that is natural. They have to practice to do something that is spontaneous, that is our natural birthright, because they've chosen to mess themselves up. So because we have chosen somehow or other to mess ourselves up, therefore we are going to have to do a practice, although the practice itself is not the cause. And when we are doing the practice, we should try to do it with some affection and some gratitude, and try not to do it mechanically. That will help. I hope that answers your question.
Excellent, Mataji. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Anybody else?
Just a comment by Govindranandani Mataji.
Yes. There's a comment in the chat.
Yeah.
Krishna smiling at us, a humble reflection. Besides pleasing Krishna with sadhana, may my actions, my words, and thoughts in general life make him smile. Yes. Thank you for mentioning about your new book. I just looked up and ordered it. I guess it'll be great for interface setting and general meditational practice too. Yes. Yes, definitely. Any other questions or comments?
I think that's about it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to let me go so many thousands of miles away to New Jersey from
Thank
here
you
in
so much.
Vrindavan.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So,
Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Prabhupada ki jai.
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 Dam ki jai. Okay.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Quick announcement, please join today evening. We'll go past my celebration at our temple, 5:30 to 9, with Tulsi Aarti, Prabhupada Aarti. Bring boga, dry items, yogurt, butters, those kind of items as well. You can bring nuts, fruits also you can bring. So, yeah. Quick announcement. And then we have Japa retreat by His Holiness Rampas Maharaj. Not this weekend, but the following Thanksgiving weekend before. Because Thanksgiving is on the weekday, so week before that, weekend before that. Then we have next Tuesday is Ekadasi, very important Ekadasi, and it's Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj disappearance, fasting till noon completely for him, and then Ekadasi. So December, that is November 12th. Last day of Kartik is November 15th. We'll have offering lamps also, deep down, and offering lamps at the temple, like last year, last Purnima. So we'll have program at temple on that Friday. Those are the quick announcements. November 12th to 15th. It's very important days. Last 5 days / 4 days of Bhishma Panchak. Anybody wants to follow, anyone has questions, they can send me a message if you want the details. It's optional. It's not a mandatory thing. Yeah. Thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.